Surrounded by demons, I bet you any money, somebody up the sky. We circle the ends anytime. Me na make up in a broad day. Rise up from under the dirt like Satan. I run up on a pagan horror show style. Yo, big 4-5. Run up with a nozzle of the big 4-5. Try to get surrounded by demons, I bet you any money, somebody up the sky. But you may find me. But you may find me. But you may find me.
Yes, guys, welcome back to the next episode of the Fully Charged podcast. This month we've got Stranjah.
What's going on, brother?
How are you, man?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, we've seen you cooking up a storm on YouTube with your production videos, so we thought, why not get you down? It'd be a good topic to talk about.
I'd love to have a chat. I've been busy with the YouTube thing and really happy to be here to share my story with you guys.
Yeah, so just for the viewers who may not know who you are, do you reckon you could just give us a quick introduction of who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing?
Yeah, once again, my name is Stranjah, Stranjah. I am known as a music producer. I have been making music for 25 years now. I started back in around late 96, early 97 with kind of house beats, and then gradually got into jungle, drum and bass shortly after. And then I've been fortunate enough to have releases on some big UK labels such as Flex Records. That was my first signing. Then I got signings on Doc Scott's label, 31 Records, Metalheads, Renegade Hardware, Hospital Music, Critical Music, to name a few. So it's been a long but awesome journey.
Yeah, some pretty certified labels right there, especially as an international producer like yourself. So so you say you've been producing for 25 years. What's sort of your earliest memory in your music career then? What got you involved in the music?
Yeah, I'll go even further back to when I officially started. So even as a young child, when I was 10 or 11 years old, I always had an interest with making music. When my mom and dad bought me my first Yamaha keyboard, I would make up little melodies here. I would try to make up my own song with little training. I wasn't trained in playing the piano or anything, but there was always this desire to create, and it grew from there. And I learned about house music in the mid to late 90s, and once I heard house music, I really wanted to learn how to make this music. I was so intrigued by the sounds, and I just had this curious mind about music. I just really needed to know how this music was created, and I searched all over my city for people to teach me, and I found a few mentors who got me started, and the ball just kept rolling. I just kept wanting to do more and more music, and I learned more as I grew and kind of blossomed from there.
So you mentioned your parents bought you a keyboard at a young age. Were they a big musical influence on you? Did they come from a musical background, or did you sort of find that on your own path?
Yeah, I although my parents were not musically inclined, they were a big influence on me musically, because my dad had a pretty large vinyl collection, and I would listen to his old vinyl records, like from the Bee Gees and ABBA and Santana and those kind of things. So definitely my dad's musical influences had kind of influenced my kind of taste. So those kind of early influence shaped what I was into. So when I first heard disco, like from ABBA and that kind of thing, I always gravitated to that more kind of electronic style beat, or that repetitive kick drum, right? So that was my early introduction into dance-oriented music. And then I started to hear like new wave or electro by like Depeche Mode and artists like that in the 80s. And something about the electronic beat has always been, I've always gravitated to that kind of beat, and that has always been what I've been into, is just electronic sounding music.
So once you found your love for electronic music, has that stayed throughout your musical career, or did you path into any other music genres during that time?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I was around 10 or 12 years old, I started to listen to kind of what they call Eurodance. It was the closest that I could find from that was sounded futuristic, right? It was really commercial. I don't know if you know what Two Unlimited is or Culture Beat, but they were like really popular artists back in the 90s, and it was techno music, but it was commercial. It had singing, it had a rap part, and that was what all the kids listened to back then. I was like, wow, this music sounded so futuristic. So I guess that was my first introduction to more, I guess, electronic dance music. And then shortly after is when I learned about house music from like New York and Chicago by people such as Masters at Work or Todd Terry, right? So those kind of more underground sounds kind of blew me away, because I was like, whoa, it sounds so foreign to me, these kind of sounds, and it sounds so underground. And that time, the only place you could access that music was late night radio, and I would stay late at night at midnight or 1 a.m. to just listen to these radio shows on college radio stations and things like that, and they would play this really underground house music, and I was just really intrigued by it. And I started to learn more about it, started to read magazines about it, like Mix Mag. We had I think there was a magazine called Music with a Z. I found a online community before the internet age. That time we didn't have internet back then. We had what was called a bulletin board system, where it's kind of like a local internet community. And I found one that was specialized towards dance music, and that's where I found my early mentors who taught me the way of making electronic music. And that's where kind of grew from there. Met my mentors, started to read more about it and learn more about music. I found some record stores in Toronto, such as Play the Record, which was one of the hubs for DJs to get underground records. Then there was Eastern Bloc Records, which was actually a UK record store that brought a branch down into Toronto, Canada, and that was one of the main shops for drum and bass records, and got a lot of my drum and bass records from that shop.
So that shop there, was that your first sort of introduction to finding out what drum and bass was growing up?
No, so I learned about drum and bass through the radio, and just being curious about music. So back in the 90s, every Saturday, I think it was like 5 or 6 p.m., there was a show by an MC named MC Flipside, and he had a DJ named Freaky Flow. And normally they would play like underground house and things like that, but once in a while, for half an hour, Freaky Flow would like throw down a set of jungle on commercial radio. I was like, wow, this stuff is crazy music. Like, it just sounds so, I didn't know what it was called. It just sounded crazy and underground and unlike anything I've heard before. So I guess that was the first time I heard jungle, and then I learned about, I guess, what it was called. Again, I was reading magazines like Music Magazine. I learned about Goldie's Timeless record, which came out around, I think it was 96 or 97, but that back then, Goldie's Timeless record was spoken about everywhere. Like, all the big celebrities were like talking about this album. Like, even in Rolling Stones magazine, everyone was bigging up Goldie for this album. And I started to read up on Goldie, and then I learned about Reinforced Records, which was one of the early jungle labels, and I picked up a CD called Enforcers Above the Law. I think that was one of my first jungle CDs that I ever bought, and yeah, I think that would be my first official dabble into buying a jungle record, was buying Enforcers Above the Law. It was a compilation on Reinforced Records, and it had a lot of old school jungle records, such as Goldie, Manslaughter, Groove Rider, Sinister. I forget if it was Doc Scott Sinister or if it was the Groove Rider remix of it. Anyways, the music just sounded so... It sounded like crazy, manic, and intense. So the first time I put on that CD, I actually was turned off by it. I was like, I can't listen to this. I put the CD down. I was like, I can't listen to this. This is like devil's music.
Too much.
And yeah, I went away from it. And then I came back to a week after. I put that CD back on. I was like, maybe I'll give this another try. I listened to it. And then my brain hooked onto it. I was like, wow, this stuff is crazy. I love this stuff. And I want to start making this stuff. I guess that's when I decided to switch from making house music to jungle music.
So at this point as well, what was sort of the drum and bass scene and jungle scene like in Canada? Were there many artists coming out and releasing stuff publicly?
Yeah, so when I got into jungle music, I say that was around 97. So I didn't rave at the time. I didn't really know if there were raves. I've read about them in, for example, in the magazines, but I didn't know that there were actual big raves in Toronto until a year or two after. I went to my first rave in 1999. It was a party by an events company called Renegades. It was Renegades, their 2nd year anniversary, and headlining was Andy C, GQ. I think Shimon was on the bill as well. Randall was there. It was in
big lineup.
Yeah, it was a crazy lineup, and it was held in a Masonic temple. So imagine that we were in this huge, colossal building. There was these colossal speakers on the left and right of the stage, and there was like smoke and fog, and people were like dancing like they were floating on air. I was just, whoa, this is crazy. Like, I've never been to an event like this, and they had lasers and stuff. And I guess that was my first introduction to the rave scene, and it was intense, and I loved it. But from what I understand, the rave scene was there before even I got into it. We had raves even back in 1993. One of the key people, Marcus Visionary, organized some of the early raves back in the 90s. So I think because of the relationship between United Kingdom and Canada, we had that, I guess, cultural exchange. Music just we were introduced to UK music early back then, and from what I understand, we had big raves as well. We had raves that had thousands of people. I think the peak was around 99, 98, 99. We would have raves with like 10-20,000 people in a convention center. We had all the big name DJs from the UK would come out here, as well as DJs from the US. And yeah, I think after a while, the government kind of cracked down on the raves and made it a lot more difficult to throw them. So during the 2000s, then the raves started to get smaller. But it's always been around.
Were these big raves legal raves, or were they more illegal styled raves?
It was a gray area because it was held. Some of them were actually held on government property, so somehow they were able to get the rights to throw a huge rave on their properties. So I think after a while, the government just caught on and found out what was happening at these events, and they didn't like it, so they started to crack down on it.
And then, so you, 99, you said you went to your first rave. Were you producing jungle drum and bass music at this point, or was that sort of like
my first rave was 99. I was already making jungle music at that time.
So what got you into switching from producing house to producing the jungle? Was that listening to it on the radio and discovering it that way?
Yeah, again, it was that reinforced CD, the Enforcers Above the Law. When I heard that CD, and when I understood the music, I was like, okay, I want to make this kind of music, because it just, at that time, I was 17, turning 18, had a lot of what they call teenage angst, and I needed an outlet for it. And jungle had that manic frenzy energy. It kind of had that dark, sinister vibe, which gave me an outlet to put out those, I guess, pent-up emotions.
At what point of sort of your production timeline was it from sort of bedroom producing to a point where actually you started to want to take it a little bit more further and start releasing your music out to the general public and to send it off to record labels?
Yeah, so again, started to play with music production using simple tracker software late 96. And around 97, 98, started to play with jungle. Around 99, I think I started to send demos out to labels such as Flex Records. So before 99, internet hadn't popped up yet, so I couldn't find a way to connect with labels. But once in '99 we had the internet, I was able to find labels, and I found a website for Flex Records owned by L Double. I emailed them and asked them if they were accepting demos, and then back then, of course, we had to actually send a CD by mail over the continent to the UK, and so I sent a CD over. There was a DJ named DJ Steppa who was an assistant at Flex Records. I was speaking to him, and he was really loving my tunes, and he pushed it to the label owner L Double, and he really liked it as well, and he decided to sign me on to their label and put up my first record, which was Troublemaker on the A side and Freezing Point on the other side, and that was my first single, signed in '99.
And then from that point, were you able to start pushing your music a lot more into the UK crowd, or?
Yeah, at that point, once I got signed to UK, right, my tunes were then exposed to people out there, because L Double would get my tunes out to all the DJs on the circuit, right? So Groove Rider and people like that would have access to my tunes. So yeah, once I got signed, I guess meeting the right people in the scene helped. So, and it helped me get the music around.
And at this point, were you DJing as well in Canada and pushing your own music out yourself, or?
I guess you could say I was trying to DJ at that time. I was really focused on music production. I've always been more music production first, but I've wanted to learn DJing. It was one of the skills that took me a long time to learn, because I didn't have proper turntables to practice on back then. So I mean, I did start to spin. I think I did my first gig in probably in 2000 and 2001 we had a community called torontojungle.com, and it was like an online community for all the DJs and people in the scene to talk to each other and promote their events. And Toronto Jungle did an event to promote some up and coming artists. I had a crew, so I started a crew in the late 90s called Criminal Beats. So some of the members are still active. We had now he's known as Fringe, used to be known as Rip and Snare, and he's still active today. He's done some big records. I don't know if you heard of Sherelle, but she's been playing his tunes. But yeah, I had a small crew called Criminal Beats. We had Fringe, we had DJ Fear, we had a guy named DJ Rescue. We then had some MCs on board, such as MC Rude Boy, MC Striker, MC Lucid. So we had a tight little crew to do events with. So we did our first little gig in around 2000, and yeah, I guess it grew from there. From that point, I was always big on showcasing my dub plates, right? Because I produced and made a lot of music. So the reason why I wanted to play out more was that I wanted to get my dubs played, right? So started to play a little more in Toronto, and usually when I play shows, I would mainly play my own music or music from my friends, mixed in with some other records, of course.
And then what was the reasoning behind starting this collective of you and your group of friends? What was the drive behind that? Yeah, that's cool.
So I really wanted to be part of a collective. I guess so we had another crew in Toronto. They're I guess you could call them the big boys back then. They were called Vinyl Syndicate, and a lot of the guys there, Pat and Chris, also known as Mystical and Sniper, big up them, and they're my early influences in Toronto. They worked at Eastern Bloc Records, actually. So they had a record label called Vinyl Syndicate. They shouts out to DJ Slip and Slide as well. They had a big record together on, I think it was Aphrodite's label. It's called Man of Steel. It had the Superman theme, and it broke down into like a jump up record. So they were a big crew in Toronto. They threw the biggest raise, but I guess I didn't feel I was good enough to join their crew. I wanted to, but so I started my own crew, Criminal Beats, to kind of put our music out, right? So I banded it up with a couple friends that did the same music, and we did our thing.
So were you all producers at this point, or were you a mixture of producers and DJs?
I was a producer. Fringe was a producer. Actually, Fringe was producing before I was, so he was actually one of my early mentors. He actually taught me how to make jungle. Back then I didn't know what a breakbeat was, what was an Omen sample, and I was trying to recreate the sample and I had no idea how. So Fringe was the first guy that kind of took me under his wing and taught me how to resequence the Omen and make jungle. So he was making music before I was. DJ Fear was more of a DJ. Rescue was a DJ. So yeah.
Balanced between producers and both DJs.
Yeah, it's kind of like in a crew, you got to have the producers and the DJs. The DJs will rep your tunes, right?
For sure.
And the MCs will be the guy that speaks at the party.
So you've released out on a UK label. You put your crew together and you're playing out locally. What was sort of the next point in your music timeline that was your next sort of breakthrough landmark?
Yeah, around 2000, 2001, I linked up with a DJ in Toronto named, now he's known as Gremlins. We started to work closely together, and we helped each other out. I showed him some techniques. He showed me some styles and aesthetics with jungle, and working together with him, our music evolved, and so he sent out one of my tunes out to Doc Scott, and that's how I got my first record signed on 31 Records. And so then Doc Scott was taking our tunes and sending them out to people. Somehow Goldie got in touch, or somehow my tunes got into hands of Goldie around 2001 or 2002, and he was doing a world tour, and apparently he was playing my music around the world, but he had no idea who this Stranjah guy was. All he heard was he was this little Chinese guy from Canada, and he really wanted to meet me. And so he was doing a show in Toronto, doing a stop in Toronto, and me and Gremlins, we decided to work on a dub plate, because we were I think we were playing right before Goldie, or someone was playing right before Goldie, and we wanted to make a dub plate to play right before Goldie stepped on. So me and Gremlins, we made this tune. It's called, it's on my ceiling right now, or wall. It's called Diaper Rash. It came out on Architecture Recordings. Shouts out to DJ Ink. So yeah, we made this tune called Diaper Rash for the DJ right before Goldie to play, to kind of get Goldie's attention. And Goldie was like, "What is this tune?" And he's like, he loved it. And then someone was like, "Yo, you should go behind the booth and say what's up to Goldie." And I went in. He put me in a headlock. I was like, "I'm the guy Stranjah." Yeah, he put me in a headlock. He's like, "You're the guy I've been playing the tunes of." So, and then we started to talk outside and connect, and that's how Gremlins and I built the connection with metalheads, and we got a tune on their MDZ04 compilation about 12-15 years ago. We also had a tune on the Metalheads America's Mix by Clute on Knowledge magazine. So
interesting. Along the timeline now, how did you get involved with labels such as Critical Music and Hospital Records?
Yeah, so with Hospital Records, I did a track. It was a liquid drum and bass cover of a Sade song called No Ordinary Love. I got my friend Leslie, also known as Swerves, to do a cover of that song over drum and bass. And I had this song. We called it Cry For You. So you can look it up on Hospital Records. Cry For, like number 4 and letter U, so Cry For You. That I sent that tune out to just Hospital Records back in, I think, early 2010, and it was simple as just emailing them, sending the tune. The owner of Hospital got back to me, and he was really impressed. And he was like, "We want to sign this for the," I think they had a compilation called, was it Festival Drum and Bass or something? At this point, I don't remember, but yeah, it appeared on Hospital's compilation, and that was my first, I guess, foray or work with Hospital Records. And then a few years later, I did a more, I guess, neuro influenced track. It's called Test Tube, and it's really big on the critical sound back then. I was even talking to Kazra even in the 2000s when everyone was talking on American Online Instant Messenger. So back then, everyone was on this program called AIM, American Online Instant Messenger, and we were all the big guys like Andy C, Groove Rider, Kazra, everyone was there just on that platform, just trading tunes and sending tunes, like. And so yeah, I guess that was a little backstory. But yeah, I was speaking to Kazra back then. He was sending me tunes when he first started Critical Music, and their label started to grow, really liked their tunes. Met Kazra around 2015 when he came to Toronto. We connected, and I sent him a few tunes I was working on. He liked one of them and wanted to sign it for their I think it was their first Binary album. So he put me on as the first track on that album, and that was Test Tube.
Cool, that's interesting. And now moving forward, obviously a lot of the viewers are going to know you for your YouTube production videos.
Yeah.
What motivated you to get involved with doing that, putting that on a YouTube platform, and the backstory of that?
Yeah, I guess the summarized version of that story is that someone took the time to teach me when I was learning back in the day, and I guess this is my way of paving it forward and putting my, I guess, returning that, I guess, exchange of knowledge and helping the next generation of producers. I think so before this, I was working a full-time job, corporate job, but it wasn't really my passion. So when I left that job, I was considering what I should be doing. I was still making music, had some moderate success, but it's hard to just make a living off music unless you're touring all the time or unless you're one of the top names. So I guess my career just kind of evolved to instead of just solely focused on making music, to more shifting towards teaching the next generation of producers. My friend Maurice Levy always encouraged me to do more videos on YouTube. I had one tutorial on YouTube about 10 years ago. It has like 10,000, 15,000 views. It was about how I edit the Omen break. I only had that one video and never really, I guess, took YouTube that seriously until a year and a half ago when I decided to shift my career towards teaching, and that's when I started to focus my efforts on YouTube, and it's grown ever since.
And so going a bit back into your producing, you've been producing since 1999, did you say?
96.
So 96. What's sort of been the biggest change within the production styles of jungle and drum and bass between then and now?
Yeah, I would say the first noticeable change is the technology. So when I first started, I was producing with Tracker software. So I used Fast Tracker 2, which was a kind of basic software to create video game music back in the 90s. But there were like an underground circle of producers that used it to make like jungle and drum and bass. So I started making music simply with software and some samples. But for some reason, I didn't feel it was legitimate because I was reading about how all these producers had these massive studios with samplers and synths. So around early 2000, I got my first sampler, the Emu E5000, as well as the Axis Virus synthesizer. So the Axis Virus synth is one of the most iconic synths for drum and bass. A lot of massive records and crazy sounds were made from the Virus. So I started to use that. Back then we still had sample CDs, but not the way they are today. So today it seems like everything has been prepared for you. It's a lot easier to create a track because you can go on a sample site, grab a breakbeat that's already cut up for you. You can grab some kick and snares that are already processed and ready to make. You can grab presets for bass sounds. So it's a lot easier to make music today, whereas back then you would have to kind of create sounds from scratch, right? So it gave you a deeper understanding of how sound was created and constructed, because you kind of had to build things from the ground up, right? So I think that was the biggest change, is that the samples and sounds are a lot more accessible and ready to use today. Not to mention the software has gotten a lot better in that it's not necessary to use hardware, because a lot of the software can emulate the hardware quite closely, almost 99% close. So it makes it a lot more accessible for people to make music today, which is a good thing. It just allows more people to be able to express themselves and create.
And what advice would you give producers that you know now, which you wish you knew when you first started?
Yeah, I would say go beyond the sample packs, right? Try to learn how to construct sound on your own. Learn how to cut up a break beat and layer breaks to create new breaks. Learn basic synthesis, right? Learn how to listen critically to a track and break down a sound and learn how to re-engineer it, because by doing that you'll learn techniques and processes which are valuable for you to create your own sound.
So what Canadian producers are out there at the moment killing the scene that we in the UK may not know about?
Yeah, we have a thriving scene here in Canada in terms of drum and bass music. So the first names that come to mind, of course, the early godfathers such as Marcus Visionary, early pioneers such as Slip and Slide, Mystical Influence, and Sniper. And then, of course, some of the current people, Gremlins is still killing it. He has a label called UVB76. Also, Polaris has been killing it. Good friend of mine. He has some records on Hospital Records, Med School, as well as Pilot Recordings. Check him out if you have been checking out Spotify's Liquid Drum and Bass playlist. You'll find his tracks there. Schematic, or Schematics. He's also a great producer. Does liquid drum and bass, some dancey drum and bass as well. Who else? There's so many.
This could go on forever.
Who else is there? There's my buddy Tier Kahoot. He's on my label. He does more neuro drum and bass. Groves, he's a good friend of mine, my buddy. He's also my neighbor. He's signed to Exit Recordings, so check him out. My buddy Captivate, he's on my label as well. He's a great halftime footwork style drum and bass producer. Yeah, if you guys want to check more Canadian drum and bass, definitely check out my label Deviant Audio. Also, there's another label called Inner City Dance, which is a label by Marcus Visionary and DJ Lush. So one of the producers they push is Imran Graffiti. He's also from Toronto. He's a great producer. Makes some great jungly rollers. Yeah, check Inner City Dance. You'll find more Canadian artists there. Also, my good friend Flo Anastasia. She's a talented vocalist, and she's done some huge records on Ram Records. I think she's done one for Shogun Audio as well. So yeah, there's tons of artists out here doing it.
You just mentioned you had your own record label. Are you able just to tell us a little bit more information about that?
Yeah, so I have a label called Deviant Audio. So I started it back in 2016 as an outlet to put out my own music, because sometimes it's hard to get labels to sign your records, because you may have to shift your sound towards what a label wants, whereas I wanted a little more creative control in terms of what I wanted to put out. So Deviant Audio was kind of a personal outlet to put out what I want, and I started to then take on artists that were in my inner circle that I wanted to promote. So we had some great releases from Grows, from Captivate, to Kahoot, a guy in the UK called Depth. We had a big compilation called the Deviations LP, which had a lot of artists from internationally as well. We got a EP from an artist, up and coming artist named Jamari from Toronto. He had a feature on DJ Mag last year, and really excited to push his album. So yeah, we're just doing our thing, trying to push our sound of drum and bass.
What subgenre / sound are you pushing on that label?
Yeah. It's hard to pin down. I'd say I'm open to anything as long as it's well produced. We like deeper sounds, we like intricate rhythms, we like when we explore different kind of rhythms, so not just the regular type of rhythms you hear in drum and bass. So people that explore different rhythms like halftime and footwork and different jungle rhythms, we're into that. We're really into it all, as long as it's something, as long as it's something I feel I can play in a set, and I would put it out.
And have you got any artists that you prefer working with, or like your favorite artists that you've collabed with that you would like to work with again?
I'm very picky about who I work with. So I've had some, like I mentioned, I've had some records of Gremlins. So we made some records back in the early 2000s. It would be awesome to maybe do another collab with him in the future. I have a collective of inner circle who I produce with, such as Groves, my buddy David Lewis. We do some collabs. We have a group called Vortex with Captivate. So Groves, David Lewis, and Captivate. We run a crew called Vortex. In terms of people I want to collaborate with, probably more towards like vocalists. I do hip hop and R&B as well. I would love to work with some UK grime or even drill artists. My dream collab would probably to work with Drake. I've done some records with a vocalist in Toronto named Tony Ranks. So I have this record that goes from hip hop to drum and bass. It's called Don't Talk. We actually got a remix of that by Foreign Concept from Critical Records. So if you guys want to check that out, look that up. Yeah, I like to fuse different styles. So I got this UK garage record with a vocalist named Elijah. We're gonna put it out in the summer. So I'm always trying to fuse different styles and sounds together.
Has Canada been in a lockdown for the last year, or what's the situation over there?
We've got in an even stricter lockdown a couple of weeks ago. So it's been locked down since last year in April. It kind of opened up a little in September and October, but then we locked back down, and everyone's hunkered down again. So for me, it hasn't really affected me that much, other than I just have less places to go. Otherwise, I'm usually in my studio anyway, so it just has kept me in the studio so I can make more music and work on more YouTube videos. Have you missed out on any bookings or events wise in your career because of it? Definitely. Just when the pandemic hit last year in March, I was supposed to play a show and headline in Chicago, but unfortunately it happened at the right time, so I couldn't go there. So hopefully I can head there once the pandemic opens up. I would like to come back to the UK and do a little education and DJ tour out there. So hopefully once things open up and I can travel again, I'll head out your way.
That would be a great success. I think that I'd definitely try and show my face to that. And then
sure.
Finally, what should fans expect from you for the rest of 2021 and then moving into 2022?
Yeah, I'm just continuing working on my YouTube channel. So stay posted on my channel if you want to learn music production. I hope to have a little more guests on the show. I'm going to be doing other styles, visiting more UK garage, more underground garage styles, trying some drill and trap and even R&B styles. I will try more neural styles as well. I have to work on my neural design, but I plan to do more of that as well. In terms of my label, Deviant Audio, we're going to be shifting the label towards providing more tools and resources for producers like yourself. So stay posted on Deviant Audio. We have some exciting plans in the latter part of 2021. So if you guys want to stay connected, you can find me on all your favorite social media platforms. Just look up Stranjah, Stranjah, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, even TikTok. I'm always putting out content on those platforms and I'm easy to reach, so you can feel free to hit me up anytime.
Great. Well, that brings the podcast to an end. Thank you very much for coming down and giving me an hour of your time. Really appreciate it.
Most
and best of luck for the future.
Awesome, Sam. Well, thank you for having me on the show, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Nice one. Thank you very much.